Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Nikki Star Child Show. I'm so happy that you made it tonight. We have an amazing guest. He's got thousands of followers on Twitter. He's very science-minded, high science thinking, been on all sorts of science podcasts, as well as an experiencer. And we're going to jump right into it. He's been on all sorts of podcasts, including that UFO podcast, amongst a lot. You've definitely heard of him. The one, the only, Science Bob. Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here.
Yes, I'm happy you're here too. Yes, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and your life to sit down with me and discuss your experience in the phenomenon.
Sure.
So you are an experiencer. You have experienced missing time before. And there was an interesting part of your story. You kind of acquired your scientific thinking at a young age. Is that right?
Yes. So let's just go over the first 18 years quickly. I was born in Lebanon, Tennessee, where my mother was from, and we lived not far from my grandparents. And I got very ill with an infected brain before I was 1 year old. Got into neonatal critical care in the local hospital in Lebanon, Tennessee. And the doctors told my mother almost surely I would die, but if I lived, I was going to be a vegetable. And it was clear what they were doing was trying to talk her into letting me go. And she refused. She refused. So I had 3 cardiac arrests, which lasted longer than a short time. So if you want to call those NDEs, they were definitely NDEs. But I don't remember them because I wasn't 1 year old. But miraculously, the doctor put ice water in my stomach. My temperature dropped and I got over the infection. And I was not a vegetable because my IQ's been measured. Well, maybe some people would claim I'm a vegetable, but my IQ says I'm not a vegetable. Anyway, so we left Tennessee, moved to Southwest Alabama, where my paternal grandparents and my father opened a furniture manufacturing business right in the middle of the Pine Belt in Alabama. So it was the way my parents earned their living for the entire time I was in school there. So I graduated from there. Oh, sorry. So, but by the time I was 3, I got up and had a strange experience in the night and got up and went in and started talking to my mother, and just on the spur of the moment walked over to the bookcase on the wall, grabbed a book out and started reading it to her and her best friend. And I had never gone to school at 3 years old. So suddenly I could read, and fluently. I could really read well. By the time I was 10, it was clear that I was something different. I had my amateur radio license. I built my own radios. I was an amateur astronomer. I designed and built my own telescope, and it was a large one. I even ground the mirror myself. I memorized Gray's Anatomy, which is what every medical school student learns anatomy from. I memorized it from cover to cover in 6 weeks when I was 10 years old. So from that moment until I graduated from high school, given all my science and Gray's Anatomy and other things, my entire family was just certain I was going to go and be a medical doctor because it was very prestigious back in 1970s. So I left my hometown with my girlfriend to go to college. And around the end of the first month, I picked her up from her dormitory and we headed back towards our hometown and had an hour and a half of missing time. I've confirmed that with her. We're not together anymore, but I confirmed that with her and she remembers it well. And so we just told people we got lost. We didn't really think about it anymore. because I didn't have any memories. However, within 2 weeks, I had decided to change majors, change schools, no longer be a doctor, was going to be an engineer and or a physicist. And I wound up getting a PhD in applied mathematics with studying physics and engineering and computer science. So my entire life changed in 1.5 hour strange experience. And so I led a technical life until nonstop until 2020 when I retired. Okay, so 2022 when I retired. I retired in May of 2022. So right before I retired, I was still involved. I spent my life in the intelligence community, and then left 10 years before I retired, and became a professor at Virginia Tech. And I ran an institute that helped prepare technical people to go work for the intelligence community, Department of Defense, etc., at Virginia Tech. So, but I still had a lot of contacts, and I kept hearing these rumors and stories, and shown occasional pieces of interesting evidence that UFOs were a hot topic in the government. So I began doing studying. I found Richard Dolan, developed a relationship with him, became the administrator and moderator of the Richard Dolan Forum, which I still am, and saw him interview Chris Bledsoe. And I went and visited Chris Bledsoe, and we had experiences, I mean, serious ones together. He told me his whole life story. I got to interact with Jim Semivan and others. And so Jim Semivan was the person who said, oh, yeah, Bob is going to be interesting. Let him in. So I got to go visit Chris because Jim Semivan told him to let me in. Okay, so, and we saw two gigantic 40-foot orbs of the type he shows off. And these videos he gets, they do not do these things justice. They are monstrous huge, right above the trees. They glow orange. The ones I saw were orange. Then there were these flashing flashbulbs in the trees. And I said to myself, I wish they would come out of the trees so that I could see them better. In my head, and they instantly came out of the trees into the sky and continued flashing. So you see the purple background you have on all of your stuff. So the sky looked like it was smoky, or the surface of a pond, purple like that. And Chris wasn't looking up, but I was looking up staring at it. At first it was too dim and hard to see. It slowly got brighter, and then suddenly, click, like a light switch, it left. And without breaking stride, Chris said, okay, they're gone. We can go inside now. And he was not looking at the purple stuff vanishing. He just had this sense of what they were doing and saying and knew they were gone. So we went in, had a final visit, left and went home, and hitchhikers followed me home. I had apports of water and other strange experiences, began to see orbs and craft, and orbs in my home and orbs in my yard and craft in my yard. And I experienced a miraculous healing. Before I left Virginia Tech, I had a final visit with my cardiologist because I want to make sure I was okay before I went and had to find a new cardiologist. And wanted him to recommend me one, and my brother was one, so I found a good one where I was moving to. But anyway, he did a bunch of tests on me and said, I can't explain this. And I says, well, what's that? Am I all right? He says, yeah. You have 100% function with full ventricular evacuation every time your heart beats. And so I can't tell you ever had a heart attack, even though I had 3 and had a coronary bypass. So it was a miraculous healing. So that was that until a couple of years of hiding with COVID went by. And I went with Chris Bledsoe to the 2020 UFO Con and helped him write his talk. And he took off and became famous. And now he's written UFO of God. And I'm the last or the next to last adventure in Chris Bledsoe's UFO of God. Okay. So I met Lala, wrote me online on Facebook and Messenger and said, when your mother passes, and she and I had not discussed it because I didn't really know who she was other than we were Facebook friends. So she says, when your mother passes, I'd like to give you a reading if you want it, but you don't have to if you don't want to. So 2 weeks later, I was over visiting my mother. They had put her on hospice. I watched her go downhill. And while she was going downhill and in and out of a coma, when she was awake, she was talking to my dead relatives. And so that's when I got my curiosity piqued. So my mother passed. We had the funeral, got myself back together, went home and contacted her and said, yeah, my mother passed like you said she would, and I'd like the reading. So she started giving me this reading, and it wasn't five minutes before I went, this is not like any psychic I've ever seen. She's telling me things only my mother could possibly know. And then she told me things that I didn't know that my mother said. I asked my brothers, and some of the things she said they didn't know, but we asked around with friends and relatives, and everything my mother passed through Lala turned out to be true. So this is just like astounding. But the last thing in the session, she says, wow. She says, this little 5'2" feisty lady walked up to me, and I can't understand what she's saying because her southern accent is so thick. I cannot make out the words, except she keeps jumping up and down and emphasizing one word over and over. And I have no idea what it means. I says, well, what do you think? She says, it could be wrong. I says, well, what is it? She says, she keeps saying Tweety, Tweety. And when I was a year old, my grandmother would keep me. She would call me sweetie. I could barely talk, so I called her Tweety because I couldn't say sweetie. And that became the grandmother name for her for my entire family. So that was kind of it. I just knew then that she was real. And so we began investigating her other experiences, which she thought were dreams. And I quickly realized they were UFO abductions and UFO experiences. And this picture behind me is a description of a UFO experience she had and every time she has one of these, she has missing time. So that developed, and then we began a relationship, and I moved to Maryland, and we lived together, where we've endured all sorts of weird.
I love it. That's such a great love story. I'm so glad you guys have seen Interstellar, like we had talked about, because Lala came on the show and I said, you've seen Interstellar, right?
Oh, she ought to know. So I'm a gravitational amateur physicist, so I had to see that show because Kip Thorne, who did all the black hole work, he's one of my idols.
Oh, it's such a good movie. So I've got just like a general question. Like, what is missing time like? What is it like?
Okay, so for me, it's not like everyone's. Mine was, I'm driving a car. My girlfriend's in the passenger seat. I'm driving a car. And suddenly, I wake up. She's looking around. I'm looking around. We have no idea where we are. No idea how we got there. And I says, well, this is a road whose number I recognize. Let's go. And we went a little ways, and we got to a town, and I recognized the town and knew how to get home. But we had been gone in this missing time for an hour and a half. So we arrived home 2 hours late to her freaking out parents. And so I said, look, I'm sorry. We were just jibber jabbering, and I got lost, and here we are. We're fine.
Okay, so when you're in the car, it's kind of like you and I talking right now, and then bam,
click,
and then it's not like you're waking up.
The light bulb went off, and suddenly I'm looking at the steering wheel, and I'm looking up. The car is stopped in the middle of the road, dark black outside. It's rural Alabama, no lights, and we don't have a clue where we are, and no idea what happened. I'm just telling you what did happen in the background is everything about my goals in life changed.
What'd your girlfriend say after you both had like that
She said,
that
what happened? I said,
moment?
well, I said, I don't know. Well, you've been gone a long time. I just think we got lost. Maybe I had road hypnosis, but I will go home. But later on, she knew it wasn't road hypnosis. She knew it was something weird. Later, after I realized that had been about a missing time, she and I talked about it on the phone, and she remembered it.
Wow, and I could see that being something that would be easy to forget too, because it's kind of like the way I feel here, like you saying it is kind of like a glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah.
You're driving and then bam, like everything's dark. Why is the engine off? Because we had Tom Reed on the show. Tom Reed's a friend of the show. We love
Yeah,
Tom
I know
Reed.
Tom.
And Tom, it's this he same thing. Just showed up into the car, right? Didn't know what had happened. The engine's off. His grandma and his mother had changed seats, right? So I mean, this is part of what we hear frequently. And then what's really interesting to me about your journey, especially hanging out with Chris Bledsoe and seeing the orbs, and also just how how much Bledsoe has a connection to God and these orbs, right? So and you're a very scientific man. You're a science Bob. You're a science Bob. You're an experiencer. You can explain this to us. What do you think we're looking at from your perspective? Craft, orbs, angels, aliens. Is there a connection to the afterlife? Why are these always meshing when it seems to be when we research it more?
It's some kind of non-human intelligence and or our deceased spirits, and they both are related in somehow. Past that, I'm just about as ignorant as everybody else. What I do is I try to collect evidence to convince others that have an open mind. I'm not trying to do science with other scientists. I'm trying to get evidence that convinces others to have an open mind and maybe do CE5 or go out and look up at night. Because if you look up at night and you have a camera or two, you will see stuff no matter where you are.
Yeah, and I'm clipping things, and I've talked to a lot of people where they just look up and they say, "There's the dancing stars. There's the dancing stars." It's the afterlife connection. There appears to be an afterlife connection. I always have talked with people. One of the reasons I want to know about the aliens is because I think it's going to help me understand what happens after we die, after you die, after I die. I think the alien question opens that. Do you think that's possible?
Well, so except, Lala's as much a paranormal person as she is an experiencer. So she does psychic medium readings for people. And I've now watched that nonstop for 2 years. And when she gives somebody a reading, they leave with tears in their eyes and or laughing or smiling or whatever, because they realize the person I wanted to talk to came through, and this woman has the ability to pass messages back and forth. And therefore, since the responses were intelligent, they are still alive. So I think our consciousness and not ET's consciousness, etc., all are nearly eternal, and that is the thing we have in common.
There's a topic that I've been following, and I've kind of put a name to the phenomenon, which is called a starseed scientist. People in this category would include Jack Sarfati, who at a young age received a phone call asking him if he wanted to join another group of people who were just as intelligent as him, getting these communications. Have you ever felt like maybe you were having sort of direct communications in that regard? Obviously, you had your experience where you were able to take in all of this information very fast as a child, right? And so do you think that there's any connection with that?
I feel like, and this is belief and intuition, especially given the thing we're going to show you later, which gave us our orders, that I lived a life, had children, and so forth. But this, where I am now, is their plan for my life. That's what it feels like.
The aliens plan for you?
Yep. And then all my technical life, from the time I was in high school till present, I get downloads.
Well, because the phenomenon that I feel like is legitimately a good word to call, like the starseed scientist follows a similar path that you did. Like you're like, yeah, Jim Semivan, Bledsoe, all of a sudden finding yourself in these inner circles and pockets of people who are doing this heavy lifting for disclosure. And so I don't know how much you've heard about that, or if you have actually maybe even
No,
acknowledged among.
I have. So yeah, I'm friends with Bledsoe and John Ramirez, and I know Semivan a little bit. I know Chris Bledsoe a lot, and I think Lala has been regressed, and she's a starseed, and so I just feel like they had a plan for me right from the beginning of my life, and I was unaware of it until late in my life.
Do you feel like they're communicating with you ever in some way? Maybe not telepathically,
Every
maybe
now
through
and again, but they
symbols.
really communicate with her.
Right. Her and I had talked about that quite a bit too. And we went into a little bit about that. Yeah. Um, and that's the thing is it seems like it's very hard to get these downloads. I don't know if you've ever heard, have you had a download before? What are the
Not nonstop my
no?
whole adult life. So,
Okay.
for example, people can go find out easily that I started two companies, Hawkeye 360 Incorporated and Federated Wireless Incorporated. Both of them, there are multiple patents the company has filed and received with my name on them. The ideas in those patents were all downloads. One day I was walking and suddenly got inspired and had an idea and turned it into a company.
That's fascinating. And it's just all kind of I mean, so what's that feel like though?
Well,
Is it a lot of information? Does it feel like information overload almost?
yeah, indeed, and it's perplexing because I will have this idea and I am absolutely convinced it's right. And then I find out nobody else has ever done it. And the perplexing part is I don't know how to bring it to fruition. So I spend a year putting together people who can help me. And then together, we bring it together and patent it and then turn it into a company. I've done that twice now. So, and I had downloads before then, but those mostly turned into interesting work for the government or interesting technical papers at a university. But the ones that people can easily check out are the patents that I did for Hawkeye 360. Look, Hawkeye 360 does geolocation of radio transmitters on the Earth from orbit. And that is a many decade long studied process that billions and billions and billions of dollars and lots of smart people have done for the United States government and others. And who am I? Have never worked in that in their life to have an idea that totally, utterly revolutionizes finding of transmitters on the ground and doing geospatial intelligence. And so now Hawkeye 360 has a contract with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and is was the first commercial company to have all of its satellites adopted by the National Reconnaissance Office to participate in the national constellation. That's the first company to ever happen. And so I revolutionized how that stuff is done. And the photographic satellites, they've revolutionized it. So the way the United States purchases data from on orbit has been utterly revolutionized by small companies. And that revolution will continue.
I mean, things are just happening so fast right now in the UAP, in the UFO world. How are you navigating yourself right now? I mean, we've already discussed how you feel like they kind of chose you. They want you to succeed. This is what your path is. They're trying to, encourage you. What is it they want you to do? What is it they want you to say?
Okay, so listen, let me bring this picture up now, if you don't mind. Okay, so Lala and I, we regularly go outside and observe, and we have seen hundreds of things in the sky. But one night was different. I'm sitting there fiddling with my low light level camera, and I'm knowing I need to go outside. She walks up to me and says, I think we need to go outside. So it was clear we were being told to go outside. So I got a video, which is CE5 on steroids. And that video is available on YouTube for people to see. And then she says, give me your big camera. So I handed her my Canon EOS RA fancy high dollar super camera. And she picks it up and goes click. And that photo is the one you see. And that thing walked up 6 feet from us because she pointed the camera right in front of us at the ground. And then you see this face in what looks like smoke. And then there's a thing up in the upper part of the photograph that looks like maybe it's the moon. No, that's on the ground, pointing at the ground. So that's an orb. And so within 24 hours, this thing had telepathically communicated with her and told us to get on with it, that we were needed to help with soft disclosure and convince more and more people that all of this was real and happening, help them see how they can easily do it. So that's my task, is to enable people to technically gather data. And then I go around in spaces and on social media, and I tell people how to view what is happening in the public with the government, and how to view the Disclosure Act and the UAPTF and Arrow, and I've regularly been a thorn in the side of these people who are out there sending BS out of the government from Arrow and others, because I call BS in a heartbeat, because I can tell when they're spinning us. I've been a thorn in their side and they hate it. Okay, so but Lala and I both got this message that we are to do soft disclosure and do it nonstop, and that's what we do.
So this is a photo of, you were saying, because this isn't a photo of the moon.
No.
Not the moon. That's an orb.
She literally had it pointed at the grass in our yard.
Right. It's grass.
Click, and this entity was in the center of the photo.
Okay, so this is a picture of grass, and then you could see the entity's face.
Yep.
And then also this.
And it talked to her telepathically before the night was over.
And this was this blue when she took it, or she?
Actually, so let me tell you how it was literally gray. You could see the face. I put it up on Twitter, and somebody says, "Look, if you do this, it shows up better." And but I both pieces of evidence are available. You can see the original, and this was done with a blue filter to make it show up better.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure the gray is good too. I see the face, I see the orb. That's the kind of
the eyeballs, the nose, and the mouth, and the big skull. They really like, wow.
Yeah, that's pretty dominant. And so it was just kind of like a nudge from them to say, hey, keep going with the soft disclosure. That's kind of,
and keep helping people figure out it's real.
So are these, where is this? Is this orb an extraterrestrial? Is this orb a demon? Is it an angel? Is it like a miscellaneous?
We've been treating it like it was a non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial. That's what we feel like. And so she can really usually tell if a non-human entity has good intentions or bad intentions. That's the plus of being a psychic medium or being around one. And this one had no bad intentions. As a matter of fact, it's nearly emotionless. And so when it came, a hive mind arrived, and she heard all this buzzing, and suddenly it coalesced into like the booming voice of God in her head and told her what to do.
So do you guys believe in angels and demons?
Yeah. Yes, I believe in angels and demons. Because I believe my friend Chris. And my father, just so you're aware, my beliefs are based on my father was a Methodist minister.
Okay. Well, that's great because I mean, I don't know where. I mean, we could talk Christianity. I love it. I love it. But I really am interested in this photo. And I'm really interested in these telepathic downloads. Did you want to say anything else about it until I take it, or can I put it down now?
Actually, you know, we can discuss as long as you want, but you've got the major piece of the story. It has not returned, except we have a video on our front porch security camera of it walking up and coming through the front door. And that night, Lala was taken, and she had marks on her body the next morning when she woke up.
You guys have video footage of the entity coming into the house?
Yeah.
Where is it? Are you guys showing on your channel yet, or where is it floating around?
Yeah. We have both of us have Facebook accounts, and we have a shared library of photos and videos publicly available on Facebook, and the video and the photo is in there. And again, it looks like this gigantic, really tall entity, like tall gray, if you will, standing in our front yard and walks in the front door.
That's
and then
scary.
I have no memory of anything until 10:30 or 11 the next day. She wakes up with a triangular bruise and feeling a little rough after her long night of being messed with. She's been taken since she was a child.
Have you ever had triangular scars?
No.
No triangular scars.
No.
But Lala's.
No, I've never had a scoop mark or a scar or a memory of an abduction. The only thing I am sure of that would involve them is this missing time.
Right. Wow. And it's just so beautiful that you guys both found each other, honestly. Right.
It was like it was designed.
Yeah, really, like it really is beautiful. You know, because so much of the time I talk to people, they're like, well, you know, they think I'm crazy because over the internet, we all know we're crazy when we're on the internet or on Twitter, blah, 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 blah. It's like, yeah, of course, you know. And then it's funny whenever I meet people outside of the internet who are into UFOs, they'll always say, well, you know, I think this person thinks I'm crazy. And I'm like, but everyone thinks we're crazy. And then so we could finally find people who validate these experiences, you know, like what Lala's experiencing and the trauma associated with the abductions is a lot. It's not walk in the park, you know. I don't know. It doesn't sound like it's too fun for a lot of people. I don't know. What's your experience with that?
Like she and her father experienced things together, and he was her tutor with her abilities. But she had experiences her whole life, and when it's non-human, she can tell because it's what she calls it. They give me alien Xanax, and I'm calm and don't care. And when it's a human spirit, especially if it's not a great one, she gets scared.
Oh man!
The interpretation of her non-human intelligence interactions, she didn't really. She got her first validation of all of that by talking to me after we got to know each other. She thought stuff was dreams, and I says, "Okay, let's write down what you think you remember." We wrote it down, and then I would go and find 10 identical cases on the internet to show her she wasn't alone. And then she's had reptilians and mantids and MyLabs and hybrid children, on and on. And the angriest I have ever seen her, is when I told her that likely she would find out someday that the two little boys she held in her arms on the craft were her hybrid children, and they always take them away from you. And man, she says, those blankety blanks better know or show up, or I'm going to tear them into a million pieces. And I believe her.
Wow. She talked to Melinda Leslie?
Oh, yeah. They know each other.
That's good. That's good.
No, they know each other. Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, we were with Melinda 3 weeks ago in Nevada.
Yeah, I love Melinda. I've met her a couple times in person too. She's an amazing human being. Um, yeah, but that's the thing, about the alien hybrid program and just like the pain associated. Like when I first saw Melinda Leslie's testimony about her children, her hybrid alien children, it's just that extraordinary a seating with Melinda Leslie and all the alien hybrid mothers.
My heart broke
That
for her.
Oh gosh, mine too, Bob. Mine too. I just was so sad. Like it really is this part of you, and they're just up on the ship and they can't be with them. It's very interesting, all of it.
That
But so
and
Lala has
that is
two
she's
babies.
flown. Melinda's flown the craft, and Lala can because I've seen her exhibit telekinesis, so I know she can fly the craft.
Wow. I mean, it all starts to kind of make a little bit more sense to me, especially when we start talking about alien hybrid babies and all those things associated with it, because the hybridization program, I mean, it's what the future is, and people are always like, why are the aliens doing this to us? If we turn the tables, it makes sense. We would probably send little grays out to a planet that we couldn't reach, and we'd probably pluck one of those people on that planet and bring them onto a table and do all these things. We would probably, if we wanted to make sure that like the human species existed in any potential capacity, we would go and make sure that we mixed our DNA with another entity on another planet, it's still just for the hope that we could survive. Like when you turn the tables, it totally makes sense why entities would be just trying to keep life going at all. And the alien hybrid children,
Yep. I think they're
that's
miserable. I think they're miserable, and they want to regain feelings.
the alien hybrid children,
The
because
aliens,
the grays, the aliens. Yes,
the
I've
aliens
thought.
want to regain feelings.
I've thought about that before too. Like I think that they look at us like puppies, like the way puppies are super excited, right? And then they get older, but I think they look at it like that because I think they might have a lifespan of like 1,000 years, right? And if they have a lifespan of 1,000 years, they do not remember what it's like to be like, yeah, especially when you only on average have about 60 on this planet. Like we're
Oh
pretty
yeah.
dang happy to be here. So I could see that. Yeah, and that's probably why they're so you think there might be breeding them so that they can feel like more emotions because
That
they've lost
and
that in
maybe they
civilization.
want to live here with us, so they need to look like us.
Yes, they would have to look like us. And it could
And
be like
furthermore, they
very
probably want to convince us they have something to offer us, so that we won't shoot them in the street.
so okay, so we have all of these people coming out, right? We have Admiral Gallaudet, who just came out recently. We had the SALT conference, and somebody came out, Nell, I do believe was his last name, came out and he said that, yeah, it's obvious there's definitely non-human, right? And so disclosure's already happened for you. It's happened for Lala. It's happened for me. But what's it going to take the general public? And does it even matter? Does it have to be catastrophic? How soon? Or are we already there? Is it already over? Is disclosure already
I
happened?
think we're at the end of the beginning, but the beginning took 80, 90 years. And so I think my task is to take my technical abilities, because I'm watching technology. Technology is going cuckoo, and there will not be long before I'll be able to walk up and say, "Hey, computer, do me a favor. Turn on my cameras and record every UAP you see in the sky, and look at all satellites and astronomical things and other things you can find, to make sure it's none of those, and put out a list and put out the evidence and tell people where I did it and how I got it." I mean, you're just going to be able to do that in under 10 years. And after that, people will be convinced.
I mean, it's, and, you know, when it comes to the next steps of disclosure, do you think we're going to, yeah, we're at the end of the beginning. I could see that at the end of this 70-year whatever thing that we've been put through, right?
It's
Through the
longer than that.
ringer.
So we got a craft from the Italians that they found in Italy in the 1930s, and we got it through the interaction with the Catholic Church. So Pope Pius, whatever his number was, arranged for us to get it. So we've been at this for a while, but the thing that really, of course, blew the doors off and started the national security state was the marriage of 1947 Roswell, the Soviet Union starting the Cold War with us, and the 1952 overflight of the Washington, D.C. that scared President Truman to crap and back. And he established the national security state that year.
Yeah, people don't talk about that enough. The 1952 flyover Washington. And I think it was 2 nights. It was 2 nights.
2 weekends in a row.
2 weekends in a row.
Many, many minutes, each of 2 days, a week apart.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a huge security threat, right? Like back in 1952, even today, that would be a huge security threat. Yet it's something that's never talked about. It's like all this stuff just gets lost, like the Battle of Los Angeles. We have that great photo of a flying saucer. It's right there. It was taken by a journalist at a newspaper, but it doesn't matter what is put out there. People they're not gonna believe it. So I got a question for you real quick, because we had Jon Stewart. I don't know if you're familiar with Jon Stewart. He's doing the alien interview documentary. Have you heard of this?
I don't know.
This documentary?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I've seen that.
Do you think this is what they could potentially look like?
I think that has a high probability of being real. But I am not certain personally.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting about it, is you get, all sorts of different takes. But from what I've heard, most people say that that's pretty much what they probably look like. And everything kind of would make us point to that way to sort of think that. So I want to go back real quick to this healing experience that you had. And that was after the orange orbs with Bledsoe, is that right?
Yep. Within 2 weeks, I began having strange experiences. And during that period, the person that went with me had her right side weakness from stroke healed, and I had my heart healed. Look, her neurosurgeon told her, look, I don't need to see you anymore. And she says, why? Don't you need to look at me regularly? He says, there's not a reason, because you don't have any lesions in your brain. Her injury completely disappeared.
So what do you think about the cases with, it's nice to know that some of the forces in the universe are beautiful and positive and like healing, and that there's really some great spiritual forces, entities, whatever. They obviously, they helped you. It's in my own opinion, like the Bible is completely legit, mostly because a lot of that stuff really can happen, like magical healing, like things like that can happen. But the thing about it that always kind of gets me is we have like the magical healing aspect of it. I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thoughts. People are distracting me. But no, one second, I'm pausing it because I have to. Oh, because there's also these cases of people who are interacting UAP and they're getting brain damage, like Gary Nolan saying, right? Like, and that, your story is that like there's a lot of people, like Steve Greer did CE5. There was a guy who lost his hearing, who got cured by a light being while he was doing CE5 out there. But on the flip side, there's all these veterans coming out saying they've had brain damage from UAP. So are both of these happening? What's going on with that? What do you think? What do you think?
I think they do these healings, for example, as demonstration of their reality, and in some cases to help people they won't help from. So there you go. That's my best guess, which is basically what I can do is guess.
Do you think they're intentionally hurting humans with the UAP brain damage cases?
Yeah, I think so.
Intentionally?
I think that they are intentionally helping them, but I don't know. I don't think that they necessarily caused it, but I do think they're helping them.
Because I've heard that too. I've heard that like some people say it might be similar to like a human walking into a jet exhaust, right? Like you're going to be hurt, you're going to be damaged. That more than likely some of these UAP damage that's happened with this could very well not be malintent, which I guess could make sense, right? Which I guess could make sense. But I do know that currently there are VA cases going on. The people who have lost their families to incidents associated with UAPs are actively having lawsuits through the VA because they're trying to figure out what happened to their families during these UAP incidents. And that's where it gets a little bit weird when we start documenting these things. And that's something you can bring to a normie and be like, did you hear about this?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a lot of odd. There is a lot of odd. So I wanted to bring up one thing. If you'll share this. This is Michael Carter. He's a minister of kind of a Universalist church, and he has written what, in my opinion, is the most expansive, well-researched book on all the instances in the Bible of non-human intelligence interacting with people. So you can find his book, Michael Carter, you can find his book on Amazon. I interviewed him a month ago, and he is really a smart guy.
I mean, I think it's right. I think it's legitimate completely. You know, like it's actually, my faith in the Bible has actually become bigger since I started diving into UFOs because it's easier for me to explain to myself. Like on a logical perspective, the Bible makes more sense to me if I look deep into it. Like, so what was your favorite interpretation of the Bible that he had related to NHI?
No, what he does is finds vignettes in the Bible and interprets that event as a non-human intelligence, and he well researches it. The other person you can go read is anything Diana Pasulka writes, because that is her life doing that kind of research.
Yes, I love her and I love her work. She just does such an amazing job. That book is one, right? American Cosmic. I always mix it up.
Cosmic, and the follow one's even better.
Oh yeah, I haven't read that one, but American Cosmic is one that really hits a lot of homes. It's so interesting because the connection to religion and UFOs, and also the connection between like the belief in, right? Like, what are we believing in? What was your takeaway from that book?
Well, so my interaction with that book is conflated with my interaction with Chris Bledsoe, in the sense that she introduced Chris to Tim Taylor. And then, of course, Taylor and she and Gary Nolan went to the desert together and picked up pieces of craft. And so, and I learned about, and I met Taylor after I knew Bledsoe at SCU in Huntsville and chit-chatted with him. He's not easily approachable, but I did get to talk to him. And she's just made a career of taking the odd that is in the Bible and then going to the original sources, because she gets access, that are hidden in the library at the Vatican, and reads the original in the original Greek or Latin or whatever, and finds that the rewrite of almost all these stories in the Bible is awful. That it's actually much more interesting and rich and weird than the story that's as put in the Bible by King James and his council.
Right, because the interpretations in the Bible sometimes, like you have Ezekiel's wheel, right?
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with somebody and they were like, no, UFOs aren't real. And then once they learned UFOs were real, they were like, oh, Ezekiel's wheel, chapter 1, we always knew, we always had it in the book, right? And so this is interesting because this is actually, brace yourself because this is a little intense. I'm sure you've seen it on Twitter before, but the literal interpretation, if we take what's in the Bible as a literal interpretation of what an angel is, artists have taken that information and recreated it numerous times, and they always kind of churn out like this. An angel with many eyes, many wings. Woo, that's not what I see when I see an angel. That's not what I think. And a lot of people, they have that interpretation of an angel. And it's if that's what the Bible's saying when an artist takes it, I mean, everything could be an alien. I mean, everyone who was 500 years in the Bible has to be an alien. Is that just me?
No. I think Methuselah was not a human being if he lived 800 years.
Right, because that's where it's like, okay, wait, back up, you guys. How did some of you live 500 years?
Well, right? One more thing is people I really know and trust that are serious researchers. I mean, truly serious ones. I could name a bunch of them, but you can go listen to them and find them yourself. They lived in New York City and knew Zecharia Sitchin and hung out with him, and they believe in the Anunnaki because they knew him.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff with the Anunnaki too, where they could and Zecharia Sitchin. Yeah, it all goes back so deep, and you can't really take these 2,000 years that we've been told since when Jesus Christ has been born to actually think that might give us some legitimate understanding. It just is so much more complicated than that. Yeah, and then you have the Book of Enoch, which was a hidden book that in the Bible that came about. And I think they were saying there were aliens in that as well. Yep. It's neither here nor there. It's just I could go down these rabbit holes forever.
The Book of Enoch is probably one of those that should not have been left out of the major Bible.
I agree. It appears, that was something that they took out. And that's actually what I think happened with this recent paranormal conference that they had at the Vatican, Bob. I think they were trying to make sure that nobody else could take authority, that they wanted to make sure that everybody knew that they were in control of anything paranormal.
Well, they're quite worried, and they have been for a long time, about ET showing up and ending everybody's belief in God.
Yeah, well, they should be, right? Like, they should be. I mean, that's kind of what's weird about the American Cosmic Book is it like plays off those two sides, right? Do you believe in aliens, or do you believe in aliens, or do you believe in God, right? Do you believe in structured religion, or do you believe in aliens? And how those so intermingle, like when you really get to the hardcore belief systems of all of it. We all have to, but what I like, we have to take a belief system to be like, I'm going to be religious in a structured, organized religious, we have to take a jump in belief if we're going to say, I believe that aliens are here and they're there, unless it's different for everybody. I don't count that for experiencers, right? Because you're in a different category, in my own opinion, right? You're in a category where it's different, right? And so I don't know where I'm going with that, Bob. But
so given my friendship with Chris Bledsoe and the amount of trust we have with each other, I wouldn't steal his thunder on anything, especially given that the movie about him and his family is about to come out. But I can tell you that he has pieces of evidence that is going to blow up a lot of doubt about whether or not he is seeing angels.
He's got evidence?
Lots of it.
Video?
Yes.
Video.
Now, I'm not going to tell you anything about it other than he has evidence. And people are going to understand why he believes it's angels when they see this evidence.
Well, I'm just really excited because that's what the whole scientific process is of us going into the next. I'm excited because guess what? I mean, Bob, you probably heard of Dr. Roger Lear, right?
Yeah.
His alien implants.
Yeah.
I am so happy because I just managed to have an interview. I always ask this question all the time. And I had Eric Mitchell. I don't know if you've talked to Eric Mitchell
Yeah,
yet.
I
Eric
know it.
Mitchell has
I know it.
4 alien implants. And yeah, like he was just telling me how they know that the collection of the alien implants is in the care of the family and friends of Dr. Roger Lear. But the good thing is that it's still there and we know it's there. There's a whole collection of alien implant specimens in somebody's, in Dr. Roger Lear's former house. These are the extraterrestrial evidence, right? Like, and so that was very exciting to me, even though I know I can't go in there and
that is just it is beyond strange to me that Lear get all of that and did great stuff, and then went off to this conference in Turkey and got the single best UFO video with aliens in the window that's ever been taken.
Ooh, I like that one
with the
too.
Turkish guy he met.
Oh, I do. I love that one. The Turkey UFO. It's beautiful.
And that's had no modern artificial intelligence enabled super resolution done to it. I think if that was done to it, and it doesn't fake it, it just takes the information and crystallizes it in a better way by looking over multiple frames and doing multiple things. But anyway,
it's a good one. I've heard a lot of debunks about it, but like it still gets me.
Oh no, I mean that, and I think this looks like the entity that was in your photo and mine. I mean, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
And that film has been analyzed by many who cannot debunk it.
So why do they like convertibles? That's what always get. That's the first thing I think of. So they have convertibles too, Bob. They have convertibles.
I don't know.
I guess so. But this really is like one of the most chilling. Like, this is the one that like I've seen Joe Rogan pop this up on his show because it's just like you look at it and you're like, that looks like a freaking alien. And it's interesting because it's when things are clear like this that people are like, there's no way that could be real, right? Because it's super clear. It's super clear, right?
So but when they don't want fuzzy and they don't want clear, so they just don't want it. They don't want it, period.
But if it's fuzzy, they'll be like, wow, that really does look like an alien, but I don't think it is. Like, this is how it's going to be. Every alien photo. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I just, I'm just this ufology thing. It's all so silly, and I'm just so glad you're here, willing to push disclosure.
I want to give people a recommendation because, in my early days in UFO, I would argue with people, but I've stopped. And so the only time you'll hear me arguing with anyone now is if they are in a room where I know there are experiencers and they're saying one negative trigger phrase after another, then I get in their face. Okay, and I say, look, you don't understand what you're doing is triggering people's post-traumatic stress syndrome and other emotional issues with this because they've heard the crap you're saying for all of their lives and they don't need it. And usually I push the person who's leading the space to silence them if they won't behave.
Right. People just need to listen to experiencers, and you know what? It doesn't matter if they don't have evidence. It's just listen. Yeah. Listen. That's what John Mack said when he went down there.
Actually, anecdotal evidence is evidence and data. I mean, you can do statistical analysis on it and other things. It's not the kind of data a scientist wants to take into his lab and do multiple experiments on it because they don't have the direct data themselves. They didn't see it. But I guarantee you, get a scientist who's seen something and you watch them change.
So why do you think they're discrediting all these scientists that have looked over these mummies down in Mexico? I know that
I'm going to have to beg off because look, I blew it off the minute I saw Jaime Maussan was involved. but I have not followed it closely enough after that to see if these are serious scientists and they've published a usable scientific paper. I just have not followed it. And so I've been suspicious since I saw Jaime Maussan was involved.
Yeah, I haven't seen any paper that people have written, but there was the letter that they wrote that was signed, I think, by 12 different scientists in Mexico who, ranged from being an anthropologist to being a dentist, all sorts of different, and so you have a lot of people who are saying these are like, but
Yes,
what's confusing is
I will believe a well-researched, peer-reviewed journal article, and that's it.
what? But that has to go through the universities, which is good. I'm not saying that's good. That's what we want. We want high quality information. So, right. But like, what scientist is going to help with that? Like, I know we have you.
I think had they done it early enough and well enough, well, Gary Nolan was considering it, and I know 2 or 3 people that talked him out of it because they knew Jaime was involved from the beginning. And the Peruvian government was claiming it was stolen. So he went, whoa, let me back up. The Atacama stuff from Stephen Greer was bad enough. Don't let me get involved in this. Because knew he was already going to found the Soul Foundation. So he would be a scientist who would do it right, do real genetics on it, because he is a geneticist. And would figure it out, but he begged off. And I don't blame him. It's just going to be hard for people to get convinced that those things are real.
So is Ada the skeleton an alien, or is it a human?
You mean the Atacama skeleton, or the one in Peru?
The Stephen Greer series.
Oh no! It was a human.
Do you? Okay, because a lot of people.
I read the paper that Gary did. He either made the paper up or he actually did the science and showed it was a deformed human being.
Yes. I mean, it's just interesting because that's science, right? Like, I knew you were going to answer that way. I wouldn't have asked it if I didn't know you were going to answer it. I knew you were going to answer it that way. But the thing about that...
I respect Gary.
No,
this is literal professional respect because
he's the one...
He is a steadfast, I won't do anything I can't do work on in my lab.
He shook me out of the skeleton phase, right? Where I was like, Ada's real. I was like, what do you mean it's not real? Yeah. So, I mean, it's really, really good work because you're not just getting like one-dimensional kind of stuff there. Anyway, I'm just really excited because I still think there's some people running around saying that it was real.
Well, that's when I wrote Stephen Greer off when he claimed that Gary was a government paid off scientist. Now, he has done contract work for the government. Don't get me wrong, but he has never been a government officer or an agent for a government agency. He's done contract work like a lot of people have. He worked in Savannah Syndrome with Kit Green. That doesn't mean he was work for the CIA.
I mean, this is just what's so interesting about the field is all the talk. And somebody once told me that people thought I was on Stephen Greer's payroll. I was like, awesome. I was like, I wish I was on Stephen. Get some cash for my grifting, which is another word I don't like, by the way. What do you think about that word, grifter? I
ignore it. I literally ignore it because it's overused and abused.
I just don't even think it's like being used correctly, though.
No. Most people, when they talk about people being a grifter, they are using it incorrectly. What they really mean is liar, and they're trying to find a better word.
And they're just trying to sound smarter than they are, because a grifter is just a petty thief.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I don't think I'm stealing dollars from the back pockets of my viewers for super chat money, right?
No, I'll tell you what. I wish a couple of them would send me a couple of bucks. I mean, I have a lot of technical toys I want to buy.
Yes, man. It takes money and interest and time. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your life and your day to sit down with me. Before we get out of here, is there anything you would like any of the Nikki Star Child family to know?
Sure. Lala and I have a program on YouTube, Orbis, Orbis, Paranormal, and that's the YouTube channel. And we are on every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And we've had some terrific guests. So it looks like we're going to be able to continue that.
It's beautiful. Awesome. Well, you guys keep doing it. You're doing so great. I'm just so happy that you came on the show. And I'm going to put you in the gray room right now. It's not every day that you get interviews like this. It's been a crazy week. We've had amazing people on the show. We had Eric Mitchell, who has 4 alien implants, on the show this week. We had Jon Stewart this week, who is has been trying to create his documentary about the alien interview. Tonight we had Science Bob, to come out of this week where I've been sitting down with all these people for a week and to not think that there's something there, stays with me. And I think after this week of the interviews that I've done, because it's been very fun, one after the other, is just how much value there is in a person's testimony and how much each of us as individuals put on that person's testimony. Do we believe them? Do we not believe them? It's all sorts of different things. But sometimes it's not about the videos. Sometimes it's not about the videos, the audio. Sometimes it's not about that. Sometimes it's just about the people. What do you get when you hear people's stories? What do you take with you? Well, this has been another episode of the Nikki Star Child Show. I hope that you guys check us again next time. Be sure to find your Edmonds planet. You've been watching the Nikki Star Child.